Hello, everyone. John Henry Soto here, along with George Batista, and welcome to Counterparts Show. We are super excited because we found this guy on YouTube, and we've been following him for a while. He's super awesome. It is Michael, aka TrekLad, and we're very excited to have him on our show. Please welcome Michael, aka TrekLad. Hey, Michael.
Hey, Michael, how are you?
All right,
Hey
how are you?
guys. Yeah,
Good.
good. Thank you so much for having me on this show.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to talking Star Trek with you guys. It's not very often people call me awesome. Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. So, and just to confirm to your wonderful viewers that and listeners, I haven't paid these guys anything to say nice things about me, which
Yeah.
is a brave new
That
world
is
for me.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, with completely sincere. We've been watching your videos and seeing the positiveness that you put into the videos, and also the production that you put in. You put a lot of work into it, and we're just really impressed with that. And us, we kind of started this. George called me up one day, and he was like, "Hey, it would be fun. Remember when we were kids? George and I are cousins. We grew up together. We're musicians. We played in the band together. We recorded records and toured and did all that stuff. And now we're family men. We have kids, and we're kind of hanging out. And he called me up one day. He's like, what'd be fun if we actually do a show based on the way we used to talk about Star Trek. It was more related to how it related to life, and not so much about, hey, did you see when that cool thing that Kirk did? It wasn't so much about that. It was more about the overall thing. And you have a wonderful thing on your Patreon where you talked about that as well, about how wonderful it is and to create a utopia that we all really are wanting.
Mm.
So as soon as we saw that and we saw your energy, we were like, man, it would be great to see if we can be on our show.
Yeah, yeah,
What are the
exactly.
chances would he even do that?
Right.
So thank you so much for doing this. We
Yes,
appreciate it.
absolutely,
No,
absolutely.
appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Yeah. So we have a couple questions. George, you want to start? Maybe you have a question?
Yeah. So yeah, again, I've been watching your show for a while now, and just really, I really like the way it's developed. So and I know you had a Q&A on one of your shows, which was kind of cool. We got to know a little bit about you, but I wanted to kind of just ask you first of all, tell me a little bit about your upbringing with Star Trek. How did you, tell me how you got into it and how the fascination for you about it.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, I kind of had no choice when it comes to Star Trek. Really, there was no escaping it. It's the beautiful black hole that's just enveloped me. I am technically a third generation Trekkie. My
Oh,
father and my grandfather before me, massive Star Trek fans. Going pretty much, there was this. Rumbling of this thing called Star Trek in the United Kingdom in the early 70s, and that obviously got my grandfather into it and my father, who was a kid at the time. So when I was born, it was pretty much, I didn't have a choice. It was just one of those things, and it was interesting as well because my mum has also kind of been into it in a way, and it felt to me like my father was always like I like the kind of action adventure side of Star Trek, and my mum really liked the philosophical kind of slash spirituality that kind of comes off of Star Trek. And my grandfather is kind of like a combination of the two. He kind of likes it for all of its glory, and that's kind of me as well. I love watching Star Trek. I mean, it depends on the mood that I'm in. I might want to watch the Enterprise ram into the scimitar or something, but there might be an episode where I might want to watch Data and Lal, kind of roam the decks of the Enterprise. So I come at it from two different angles, but really, primarily for me, Star Trek is I mean, it can be so many different things. Again, depending on your mood, and depending on your taste, but I look at it as being this aspirational thing. I would love for our society to grow and mature and develop into the people that we see on screen. But also, it's just pure, wonderful, escapist brilliance. Given the current state of the world, sometimes when you switch on the news, you go, right, Netflix is going on.
right.
I'm watching some Star Trek right now. So,
Right.
but yeah, pretty much from birth.
Yeah. You
I,
had no chance. Yeah.
but I'm very grateful to the family for making it
That's aw-
happen.
that's awesome. That's awesome. And there is that escape. George and I are from the Bronx in New York City. I grew up in a rough neighborhood, and I just remember being taken into this other world and thinking, well, wouldn't that be great? There's so much craziness going outside my window, and it just really did have that effect on me where it never went away. It literally was like, I don't even remember the moment that I fell in love with Star Trek. I just was in love with it, whatever, for whatever reason, and just never really looked back. And George, I think you had the same similar experience.
Definitely. My love for Well, mine started, I think, when I was about 8 or 9. And and I'm a child of I grew up 70s and 80s, but 89. And then what sealed it for me was when I went to see Wrath of Khan in the movie theater. My dad brought me to the movies to see Wrath of Khan, and that was it. I was completely hooked at that point.
Yeah. I love the connection that we were all kind of like talking about with Star Trek and kind of the world around us and how it relates and how we want that type of society. For you, what was it exactly that you feel that you connect the most to Star Trek and the world, and you in between there?
I guess it's, again, kind of going back to having a look at, opening up the window and having a look outside, and kind of wanting the world to mature and reach that, that vision of the future that we see, kind of week in, week out. And I mean, I'm fortunate. I live in the middle of England in the United Kingdom, and I'm not particularly, I'm not like, I'm in a privileged position. I have to, accept that. But it's when I see the news, and because I consider the without sounding too hippie-ish, I consider the world is one global community. Right. So when you see what's going on in the world right now, particularly over in the Middle East, I just look at what's going on and I go, how can we get from where we are here to where we're gonna, and sometimes people go, oh yeah, but Star Trek's just a TV show. Star Trek's not real and all that kind of stuff. And I know that I'm able to separate what's real and what's not real. But I think what separates Star Trek from a lot of the science fiction and a lot of the entertainment that we consume is it gives you the tools, through its stories and through its movies, so much content that we've had over the years. It gives you the knowledge, that it gives you a direction on how to become a better person. And not only how to become a better person, but how to positively influence your community, whether that's your row of houses, your street, or if you're a bit more prominent in the community, you can take it from there. So that's always been something that's really drawn me in, and that's been something that has been a very important part of my life. It's from a very early age, I've just seen it as being this kind of almost like an instruction manual on how to be a better person.
Right. And it definitely is a lot more than just a TV show. I mean, we all understand that it's a TV show, but I think the content was so ahead of its time. And I think it's why it didn't really, those 3 seasons, it didn't really catch on. And then as it went into rerun, people were like, wow, this is actually brilliant. This is the future. This is philosophy. This is spirituality, all put into future. And that's why the letters started being written. And that's why we got and it kept going, and it's still going, and it's going strong. And even though we have sometimes a few, years where we're like, oh man, is this it? They're always, it's too strong, and because of the positivity that it actually brings behind it. So that's definitely, I agree with you 100% on that. I wanted to ask you a question about your model, the way the model that you use for your show. What was that, something you sat down and said, I'm going to do a show and this is going to be how I'm going to structure it, or was it something that developed through time?
Yes. So obviously some planning went into this, went into what I was doing with YouTube, went into the podcast that I put together. But my mindset has always been that there are a lot of people out there who look at Star Trek very, very deeply, and they look at it through the lens of LGBTQ plus, and they look at it from the perspective of from a black perspective. They look at it. There's a whole load of different ways to look at Star Trek, and I guess I kind of wanted to, because I'm, like I've said, I mean, it's shaped me into the person I am. I do love looking at Star Trek very deeply and looking at the minutiae of the universe and its people. However, what I wanted to do was kind of offer some escapism to people that maybe just want to look at Star Trek as being this fun thing, because I feel like Star Trek is the ultimate variety show. It kind of crosses all genres. It can be all moods. It can be anything that you really want it to be. And I wanted to essentially, first and foremost, kind of use it as a platform to entertain. I don't want to educate people particularly. I mean, if I can create a video where I'm like, hey, did you know that this film was almost made? And people go, oh, that's cool. But I don't want to be, there are plenty of YouTube channels out there that, educate with regards to the lore. Or there are wonderful content creators out there like Jesse Gender, who talks about how, Star Trek has impacted the LGBTQ plus community. And there's so many different ways of looking at it. I look at it from, and some people might go, the way I look at it's quite shallow, and perhaps a little vanilla, and perhaps floats over all of the complex conversations that you could have. But through speaking to people in the community, speaking to people when I was fairly early on the YouTube journey, people were telling me, I just want there to be a channel that I can go to where there's this wacky guy and he's just having fun with Star Trek, just having a good time. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, and that's what drew, I think, George and I to you as far as your content, because that was the same experience that we had, and that's what we talked about when he came to me and said, "Let's talk about Star Trek, but not like remember that season 2 episode, and this whole getting really deep into, which I like to do that as well. I like to talk about that part, but also we wanted to just kind of say, like, that experience happened to me in real life, and I used that from that episode in my life. This actually happened, and I think George and I talk a lot about that, right?
Yeah, we do. And again, it's our show is kind of twofold, because we want that entertainment, like you were talking about, and that's, we relate very well that way. Is that I always talk about, use our show as a getaway from the life. At the same time, if you had a hard day at work or that type of thing, you would come put on our show at 8 o'clock or even the rerun and just escape a little bit. But also at the same time, again, we're using it as that philosophy piece, what Kirk did, what Picard did to get out of a situation. And John and I talk about it. We'll talk about that in the show as well. So we're kind of bridging the entertainment and the philosophical side together. And also, John and I, it's interesting because we look at the shows differently. John looks at it more from, he sees it from, because he has done acting and he does producing and directing. So he sees those pieces of things that I don't see. I'm looking, I'm like, oh, I never realized that from that side of things. I only see it as, watching the action adventure thing, Right. So, but it's for us, it's been a fun journey to kind of meld those things. And like I said, when he said, when he saw your channel, when you were kind of doing that as well, looking at that philosophical part, that really excited us, and yeah, so we love that part about it.
Yeah, what we didn't want to do, which I think is we didn't want to preach. We didn't want to be a show that was just like, we need to be like this and society would be much better. And if we get, we didn't want to do that, because that's just like, that's not fun. We wanted to just have fun with it.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like there is scope to do that. I mean, like I said earlier, Star Trek, you can just do so much with it.
Right.
And there might be times where I do want to be a little bit more heavy with Star Trek, as and use it as a base to tell some stories that are important. But the variety's there. There's so much scope, and sometimes I do feel like I'm not the guy, because I just want to have fun with Star Trek,
Right, exactly. And I'm a filmmaker, so I now see, and these guys were brilliant, by the way. When you watch these episodes through, and you understand what they were creating with lighting, what they were creating with angles of the show, where they were actually shooting Kirk from, and why they shot him from down here instead of up here. You realize the storytelling of these early directors, and you really can see that there was a lot of thought. It wasn't just a show from the 60s that they just put together and they just, it was really thought out. And that had to do with, of course, with Gene Roddenberry, who had a tremendous vision on what he saw. And he was there on set at every single episode, making sure that that vision was realized. So even though they had directors, I'm pretty sure that he was just like, wait a second, not that. And I think that was a really the powerful vision that really carried us through the whole thing. Is there one? This is a tough question, and I don't even like to be asked this question. I don't even like to ask the question, but is there one captain that you is the guy, or is it still different? Is it difficult to pick a captain?
It is difficult, but I think for me, from a very early age, I was drawn to Ben Sisko as
Okay.
being a character that was so rich in the portrayal and how he was shown on screen and the things that he did. Essentially, I mean, Deep Space Nine, he's essentially a wartime captain, by the end. But that's not the reason why I'm drawn to him. I'm drawn to him because of his relationship with Jake. And that's a very I did growing up have a bit of a complicated relationship with my father. And there are parallels in the relationship, particularly in the episode The Visitor, which is always just one of the absolute top episodes of Star Trek. But there are things in every single captain that
Right. Sure.
I draw something from. But Sisko, for me, pretty much since I was about 4, watching The Way of the Warrior for the first time, up until now, he's just been consistently, I think, my favorite captain.
Yeah, and Deep Space
and also he's a badass.
Right.
He is definitely.
You don't mess with Sisko.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Deep Space Nine is actually my favorite Star Trek. I know George and I go back and forth on that, but it's just done so well, the whole series. I mean, it's even when you think it can be silly or kind of like they somehow manage to make you at the end be like, holy or like unbelievable episode. And the characters around Sisko were also equally strong, always challenging him, and that's what made him a great captain. Because remember, he's situated in one place, generally for the whole thing, and he's got all these characters constantly on him, so he's not exploring like the other captains. And his thing is really it's a much difficult challenge, especially with the Cardassians being still trying to take over. And I mean, those characters I thought really challenged him really, really well, and it really showed and the relationship with his son. You're right; it was just it was really, really powerful.
I think it's depicted as being very fallible as well, and imperfect, and somebody that makes mistakes. And I feel like Jean-Luc Picard, while he did make mistakes, and it was never really kind of his mistakes never really had lasting consequences, and I feel like that's something that Deep Space Nine was able to do, because, like you said, Sisko's there. He doesn't get to warp off into another part of space. He's there. He has to live with his decisions and the ramifications of what decisions he's making. In the Pale Moonlight being just a wonderful example of that. But there are so many other episodes that you can point to. But kind of grappling with the day-to-day decisions that he has to make and how they affect not only his crew but his son and the rest of the area of space that Deep Space Nine inhabits. It's Deep Space Nine's my favorite as well. I feel like it's just the journey that they go on is so, it just grabs you in, it just draws you in. To this date, I've still not seen the documentary. What We Left Behind? I've still not brought myself to watch it, because I can't accept. I don't want there to be finality. I'll make myself watch it at some point. I'm sure there'll be tears.
Yeah, exactly. I think that world that was created there was it had so many complexities in it, and the mistakes that I think that Sisko made were part of why the show was successful. Because you look at Captain Kirk, and I love Captain Kirk, and I love all the captains, but Captain Kirk was like Superman, and
Yeah.
he did incredible things, and rightfully so. He was the first guy that we got to know, and sort of the foundation of what a captain is. And I always felt that Picard, and I don't know how you feel, George, or Michael. I don't know about Picard, that he wasn't necessarily a captain. Like, I always felt like he was sort of like a diplomat, and I thought Riker was kind of like the captain in a sense.
Exactly,
It
and
was kind of an interesting thing. I know we talked about that a little
yeah, I
bit.
want to get your take on this, Michael, because John and I were talking about this, and we're actually gonna in some future shows we're gonna compare the captains and stuff like that. But I always thought when I first watched Next Generation that Riker should have been the captain, and probably for me because he was more like Kirk, and I was so used to that Captain Kirk mentality and that strength and the good-looking guy and all this, whereas you have Captain Picard, who's I love Captain Picard, but he's that statesman, he's that diplomat, but he always reminded me more of an ambassador versus So I don't know what's your take on that.
So I mean, in that regard, I do feel like Captain Picard is sometimes. I feel like sometimes people overlook how good he was at delegation.
Right.
And the sign of a good leader is somebody that essentially surrounds himself with people who are perhaps better equipped to make snap decisions. And it's something that we saw in the Next Generation very early on, that Riker was a guy with essentially the command authority to maneuver the ship or put the shields up or go red alert. There would be many times where the thing that you would usually expect Kirk to say, Riker would say it, and Picard doesn't even. And I've watched it a number of times, kind of going, how would I react to that if I've got my executive officer who's essentially giving out the commands? But there's never any change in attitude in Picard's face or his mannerisms. He's like, no, I entrust this man or this person to make decisions. So I feel like Picard is a fantastic captain when it comes to utilizing the people around him. I feel like that's kind of what separates Picard from everybody else. I know we see that in Voyager. Sometimes you'll see Chakotay will make some decisions, but it's very firmly Janeway is the captain. She's the one in charge. But I feel like that's something that the show was always trying to do. Riker was always this Kirk Mark II, the one that goes on the away missions, and I feel like that was a good course correction, because why would you send your the senior officer, the guy in charge of everything on these dangerous missions where red shirts are always dying? You wouldn't do it. So Riker gets to do all that. I feel like that's quite smart on Picard's part, and he also got Riker to deal with the kids as well. So
that's right.
Yeah. Picard was smart.
He definitely was, and I think you're right. He was a really great to delegate that responsibility. And he never did get upset with Riker's command of the bridge.
No,
he almost like knew it was okay. He trusted that was the right decision. But again, I would think if Spock would have done that, Kirk might have been a little like, whoa.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
And I feel that probably bleeds in from the egotism from Shatner, because there's not a lot of separation between Kirk and Shatner.
That's right.
So, and there's always, over the years, people have made a big deal over the perceived Kirk Spock rivalry, and if you see some letters that Gene wrote them saying stop counting each other's lines and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure there was something there back in their hotter man years, younger years.
Yeah.
But I never really saw. It never really comes across on screen that there's a rivalry between the two. And I was watching. I watched The Balance of Terror the other day. It was a great episode, and it never shot out at the screen to me when I first watched it, probably because I was a kid. But when I recently watched it, it was when when the bridge realized that the Romulans looked exactly like the Vulcans, and obviously you've got the con officer, navigator, or whoever, and he's obviously looking at Spock, and it's not kind of hidden. There's not a lot of subtlety to it. He's like clearly bigoted in his opinions, and he's like, "Oh, you're a Romulan," and Kirk's reaction to the situation and his defense of his science officer, and essentially, second in command, is, I've got this guy's back. He's a very important member of my crew, and you will treat him with respect. So leave your bigotry, get your bigotry off the bridge. It's obviously a famous line, but very, very cool to go back and watch that again.
Yeah, I think all the captains were very, very protective of their crew, and I think that's part of what was instilled, and I think it also comes from Roddenberry's passion for his actors and for that vision where there was that 100% support. George, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious about where do you think, what do you think of the direction Star Trek has gone now with Discovery and Picard? Do you like them? What's your feeling on that?
It's a difficult question, and it's I have an answer for it. My views on the new Star Trek is that it doesn't hold the same place in my heart as being Star Trek that I can go back and watch and rewatch and love. I don't love the new Star Trek that we're getting. That's not to say that I will never love the Star Trek that we're getting. I do appreciate that time and new vision is quite an important thing. And with Star Trek, we've been very fortunate over the years that we've essentially followed one continuity. I mean, that Kelvin is kind of separate on its own, but it's one continuity, and that's quite rare for any kind of TV show or movie series. I think there's always going to be some resistance to some sort of new Star Trek. I mean, watching a documentary a couple of weeks ago, I didn't realize how many people were trying to reject The Next Generation when it was coming on. And
I saw that too. I just recently watched that. Yeah.
And now it's revered. And The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and that era of Star Trek is my favorite and probably will forever be my favorite. While I appreciate the new vision and the new direction, I do feel like Star Trek has kind of fallen into the same trappings as other contemporary shows, in that the crew are just shouting at each other and there's conflict in amongst the crew, which was never really supposed to be the way it was, and I know that some episodes in the golden age of Star Trek had internalized conflict. I mean, we saw that on Deep Space Nine, but I feel that kind of made sense. Discovery for me got off to a bit of a rocky start. It was never really the technology or the look of the Klingons or anything. It was just, I found Burnham to be a difficult character to like. I mean, it's quite hard to like any character when they're essentially leading a mutiny in the very first episode. But she has grown into a character that I have grown to respect. And obviously, Sonequa Martin Green is a fantastic screen performer. The way I appreciate Burnham and Discovery now is I'm a huge fan of the TV show 24, Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And now, bear with me for a second. Kiefer Sutherland, Jack Bauer, his whole character exists to push up against authority and to take the reins and be this all-action hero who does kind of wear his heart on his sleeve and has to make very difficult decisions that leads to a lot of self-sacrifice. That's Michael Burnham. That is exactly Michael Burnham's character, and people love Jack Bauer. He's one of American television's greatest heroes. But Michael Burnham is that exact same character. The only thing that's different is that she's a woman and she's a woman of color. Right. So there's that's the way I see it, and that's led to me kind of really enjoying Discovery. But also the show's gotten better. Season 1 was a bit rocky. Season 2 they made some adjustments. Season 3 I thought was fantastic, and it still had problems. It's still not perfect. It's still so far away from the Star Trek that I grew up loving. Is it a Star Trek that I'm going to go back and rewatch? No, it's not. But I think it's getting better. It continues to optimize and it continues to improve. I had huge problems with Picard. Unfortunately, I feel like it just made some, again, very bold in its stylistic and narrative decision making. But it's just not something that I was able to get on board with. And a future, essentially, it's in the same. It's a continuation of TNG, and it takes such a hard left from that future that we'd seen that I found it very difficult to reconcile. I'm not saying that I will. I mean, season 2 might be amazing. Who knows? And Star Trek has this wonderful habit of getting better as time goes by. So the door's not closed on it. I absolutely loved Lower Decks. I thought,
I was going to ask you about that.
As a flat out comedy show. I feel like Star Trek being this ultimate variety franchise, you can do this. There's scope. The first few episodes were a little bit saturated in this feeling that we need to prove that we know what we're talking about. And it was a little,
and all the
it was very heavy. But as soon as they found their footing, and as soon as they started getting confident, and you could feel that in the back end of the show's first run, it took off. It became something quite special. So, so new Star Trek. I feel like, its critics, I feel, have reasons to criticize. It's not perfect, but then again, if we go back and we look at the Star Trek that we've gotten in the past, none of that's really perfect. Even Deep Space Nine got off to a bit of a slow start. So I think time's required, and I think we just need to be at peace with this kind of notion that as new people, as new creative voices come to the fore, we have to give them a chance.
Right. Do you think there's a slight difference between we used to, I mean, this is the first 3 series that were now streaming, that you can stream, as opposed to in the past where you had to wait a week to watch the next episode, and you had the whole conversation and everyone was talking about what was coming up, and you were calling your friends and be like, did you see that? And now you can basically, anybody can watch it at different times, and there's this kind of like, and I hate it personally. I like the idea of waiting for the presentation, I also watch Marvel stuff, and I know they did that with the WandaVision, and they did that with some other with the Winter Soldier, and I like the fact that you got to wait a week to watch this because then everyone's kind of like gets it at once, and then everybody can have the conversation. Whereas now you talk to somebody, you're like, oh, I haven't seen that one yet, but it's on my queue, I'm gonna watch it tonight. And then you're like, just get on board, please. Just watch it when it comes out so we can all talk.
I'm not a fan of binge watch culture. I actually think it's I don't think it's healthy to sit down and watch 10 hours of TV in one go. And I also feel like because someone was making a big, because I'm very outspoken about how disappointed I was with Picard season 1. And somebody turned around to me and said, well, if you just sit down and watch the whole thing from start to finish, then you'll enjoy it more. And I wasn't on board with that, because if you sit down and watch anything for 10 hours, you get tired. Your viewing experience becomes a bit, it kind of congeals. It amalgamates into like this one big thing.
Right.
And that becomes like a crutch that the producers of the show can kind of lean on to forget certain things and drop certain plot threads, because you're not going to be able to keep up because you're watching it all in one go. Some of the greatest, serialized storytelling has been stuff that we've not binged in the past. Ronald D. Moore's Battlestar Galactica reboot from the early noughties, tremendous, and we didn't get that all in one go. I do feel like there is a place for something that you can watch in one big go, and because the way we do consume media has changed, and there are people out there. You might say, I don't like watching things all in one go, but there are people who like doing that. And even back in the day, in like the 2005, when you buy a Friends box set, you get people that would just sit down for the whole weekend and just binge the whole thing. So it's not exactly like and here in the UK, you've got like our soaps, probably similar to like General Hospital and all that kind of stuff, where people will just sit down at the weekend and watch all of the episodes from the weekdays. So it's not exactly a new thing. But I do feel like something has been lost with event TV. And I was pleased that Marvel are kind of bringing that back with WandaVision. On the flip side, though, going off on a tangent for a second, WandaVision was fine, but it felt to me like they were padding it to justify its 6, 7, 8 episode run.
Right.
So you kind of have to. You're kind of walking a fine line. Are you telling Picard, for me, was it 10 episodes? Probably could have told a really good, powerful story in 5 or 6 episodes.
Right.
And it felt like, it felt like there was some padding to kind of justify its existence. And then it tried too much. And you're like, well, you could have done that in season 2 and, trying kind of too much. It's a very difficult thing. I love having conversations about episodes. I do weekly episode discussions when they're airing. I love getting a group of people together to talk about an episode. I did get told off the other day for spoiling something that happened in season 2 of Enterprise, and I was like, bro, that's 20 years old. So I feel like kind of whatever you do, you're kind of going to get told off anyway.
You should not be on this channel, sir. You should not be here right now. So George and I were talking about using clips during episodes and creating, because I know you edit your show for Mondays, right? And what are the legalities of using Star Trek clips as far as YouTube? Do you get demonetized? Because I'm very, as a content creator, with films and stuff, I know that I don't know how I would feel somebody just taking a chunk of my film and just being like, so John did this film, I didn't like the scene, let's watch.
So that's what you just said would not be allowed. The idea is, and you'll hear this all the time with kind of fair use. I've not read up the whole legality of it. I've just watched a couple of YouTube videos that have told me what I can and what I can't do. Right. The idea is that you can use existing copyrighted material to supplement what you're talking about. So say if I'm doing a review for The Wrath of Khan, and I'm talking about its wonderful costume and production design. Now, to enhance my talking point, if I use some visuals of crew running down the corridors at Red Alert as they're heading towards Mutara Nebula, that would enhance my talking point. That would kind of give the viewer, something to that helps kind of reinforce what I'm saying. Now, if I said, the costume design in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan was great, look at this scene. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm being a bit lazy. I'm kind of moving them to the content, and I'm not transforming that content properly. So that's my understanding of the law. I have been, since I've kind of understood fair use better, essentially, as long as I'm talking and using music over the material, I know there are some content creators that will have the dialogue play in certain sections. I've been told that if you are going to use any dialogue with the material, limit it to about 4 to 6 seconds. So that's kind of what I do. So if I'm going to use a clip, I try and limit it. Maximum 8 seconds is what I'll use. And just slice it up. It takes absolutely ages to do, but I feel like since I've been doing that, I think the quality of my videos has improved because what I'm talking about is just punctuated more with the content that you're looking at the same time.
Yeah, that's good information. You have anything on that, George?
Yeah. So just a couple other questions I have for you. So obviously Star Trek is huge in the United States. How I was always wondering in the UK, how big is Star Trek over there?
I don't know.
Really?
I don't know. It's kind of weird
TrekLad.
because I'm a tadpole. I feel like there are more of us than I don't walk down the street and I see loads and loads of Star Trek fans walking down wearing all their Star Trek merch. But I feel like over the last few years, pretty much since Star Trek was rebooted by JJ in like 2008, 2009, I feel like the geek nerd culture has become more prevalent in our kind of mainstream
Right.
culture. I think British and American culture has kind of it's closer than most people think. We kind of like pretty much the same stuff as you guys do. We're not into NASCAR though. NASCAR sucks. But sorry, anybody that likes NASCAR.
How dare you?
But when it comes to Star Trek, I mean, the best way for me to gauge just how popular it is when you go to the conventions that unfortunately, obviously, we've not been able to have for a while now, but it is coming back in November in London, and I've been to a few, and it seems like the crowds get bigger and bigger.
Okay.
And I feel like that's helped by the resurgence in popularity because of Discovery and Picard, and you get these people that go, "Oh, it sucks, no one watches that." The crowds are getting bigger though, and the chatter online is getting, there's more chatter than ever before. So it's obviously taking with some people. But yeah, like I said, with the whole JJ thing and the mainstream culture, it feels to me like there are more people than ever that are fans of Star Trek, and funny enough, because people in my day job are aware of kind of what I do with TrekLad. They're like, "Oh yeah, I was watching Star Trek the other day," and I'm like, "I didn't know you were a Star Trek fan." Yeah, I've been a Star Trek fan for years, and it's kind of strange. It's like pro wrestling. People are kind of somewhat closeted when it comes to their true love of things, and I don't know why. I wear all of my fandoms on my sleeve, but yeah, I mean. Looking at the analytics, the people that watch my videos, there's about a 60-40 split, 60% being United States. So the United States is my main audience. It's about 20% UK, and the rest is made up with other countries across the globe. So the bulk of the viewership is American, which I love because I love America.
There you
for
go.
some reason.
Cool. Come on over.
Absolutely.
I've actually never been. I've always wanted to come over to. Yeah, I mean, I've always had this romantic idea of coming over to New York and having that be my first place I visit in your lovely country.
New
One
York
day.
is definitely a cool place. We're both born and raised, but we're sort of typical, like, the Empire State Building, we walk by it. I think I've been to the top once, and it wasn't even to the top. It was because I had a friend that worked on like the 108th floor.
Yeah.
So. I guess it kind of works the same way when you guys are like, "Oh, London's great," yeah, and I'm just like, "That's right."
Yeah, you take it for granted. You just because you see it every day. It's like, and the tourists are sitting there with pictures of, and you're like, whatever.
Can I get by? Excuse me. But we do actually. I think as you get older, we do actually appreciate our town. Let me ask you a question, because you said something interesting when someone says, "Hey, I love Star Trek." It's sort of like the affinity goes, for that person. You're suddenly like, "Let's have dinner."
Yeah.
Visit my, meet my family. It's such a strange thing that people just don't. I mean, I guess because we're obviously putting it out there. We have our stuff that we wear, and but what do you think it is that suddenly just makes that connection? Just so, I mean, we talked a lot about it, but it's such an interesting thing when people don't really talk too much about it, unless like it's like pro wrestling. It's something that I love to do, but I've had people tell us, like, George, I don't know if you've had the experience. I've had people tell me, like, man, I love Star Trek. It's like one of my favorite things. I've gone to conventions. I've got people that we've never talked Star Trek at all, that I've known for 20 years. And suddenly here they are, they're watching the show and in love with it. And we're like, why didn't you say something? Well, we had 20 years. We wasted. We could have done so much.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
I feel like I'd love to get your thoughts on this as well. Is as much as we talk about, Star Trek being this, the people of the future and these perfect people, they're not really perfect. It's quite an unrealistic kind of ambition. I feel like there's gonna be a future where no one gets anxious and there's no jealousy. There's none of that. I think that's always going to be a thing because we're humans. I think it's just some of that. I think that's just part of us. And I think another thing that's part of us, part of the human experience, is tribalism. And sometimes it can be good. Most of the time it's not good, but we do band together in communities and groups of people. I think it's just part of our survival mechanism. It makes us feel safe. Sure. But at the same time, it's lovely to be part of a community of people that love Star Trek, and you can spend hours and hours and hours talking about whatever. You can talk about the explosions, or you can talk about the minutiae of the universe. It's wonderful. But and I feel like sometimes there are people though that are just a bit more low-key fans, but when you kind of coax the truth out of them, it becomes this kind of wonderful thing. I'll be honest, I lay my cards out on the table. I actually like having conversations with all fans, regardless of kind of what their affiliations are, what series they like. I don't really have time, because I feel like one thing, getting on my soapbox for a second, is sometimes, like, I think a problem with our society at the moment, regardless of country where you are in the world, is I feel like we close ourselves off to people who we perceive to be different because of superficial reasons. The current political climate is something that is a bit problematic, and people going, I'm not going to talk to you and be your friend because you vote that way. Right. And that feels to me like that's a fundamental that goes against what we've been kind of shown in Star Trek. And a good example of that is the Voyager episode, Jetrel, I think I'm pronouncing that wrong. It's the one when Neelix comes face to face with the guy who or somebody who essentially committed genocide against the Talaxian race. Neelix tells Janeway that's what happened, but when she meets him, she's like, okay, I'm going to have a conversation with you. I'm not going to shun you because of this. We're going to have a grown-up humanist conversation. So going back to my original point, if you voted Republican for whatever reason, but you like Star Trek, we can still be friends. We can still talk. We can still have a conversation. If you absolutely hate Discovery, well, let's have a conversation. Let's understand why you don't like it. There are some people who go, I hate Discovery, and I'm never going to talk to you because I hate it so much. And you voted for a different party. I'm never going to talk to you. That's their right. That's what they can do. But I like to kind of go, let's just, regardless of, I don't know why I went into politics, but regardless of what life decisions you make, we can still have a conversation.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's the cancel culture that we're living in that's kind of permeated into just society and into everything. I like Pepsi. I like Coke. You go to hell. I like 7-Up. I like Mountain Dew. That kind of thing. And it's just, obviously the levels are a little bit different. And with Star Trek, we're talking about something that should be light, but it's also the way we feel life should go and the way things should be. Of course, these people are flawed. It would be a boring existence of everything if everybody was perfect at all times. That would be no fun. We need conflict. We need some kind of something happening in the world. But yeah, you're right. It's the conversation that I think people are almost afraid to have sometimes are those things that they're passionate about, but they're not sure how someone else is going to accept it. So they'll just remain closed.
I feel like the one thing that Star Trek has done since day dot for me is it's beyond all of the explosions and the colorful uniforms, is it's taught me to accept and celebrate the differences and the nuances in the human race. Doesn't matter what your gender, what your skin color, where you come from in the world, what your upbringing was, what your current financial situation is. Star Trek takes that to another level because it introduces aliens and infinite diversity in infinite combinations. That is a central core tenet of Star Trek for me that I live by. And I guess sometimes I get disappointed because people quote IDIC all the time and then they close themselves off to people that just have the smallest difference. And, I truly live by the core principles of Star Trek, and that's why I love this show so much.
And this is why I give it to Gene Roddenberry, because he had that vision at the time, which 1966, 67, where diversity was so huge, and he had the courage to say, no, we're going to have a female on the bridge. She's going to be a woman of color. We're going to have an Asian man. We're going to have, and that's the part that I love about it, that he was so inclusive at a time where there was ultimate separation.
We're looking at civil rights, movement, at that point. And some of the episodes that he did, the one that we just covered, Let That Be Your Last Battlefield,
right?
It basically just says it all right there, and right in the heat of what's happening politically and sociologically on the planet, or at least in America. Just a very amazing that he was just so connected to like this show, and he just put that spirit into it. And I still believe that it's that spirit that keeps the show going. Something was ignited there, and it's why it couldn't die after 3 seasons. I don't think so. We're coming back, and it just kept going.
Yeah, and I feel like that's something that, and that's what I do give to the people that are driving Star Trek forward now, is, they're continuing to tell some impressive stories, and they are continuing to, look at how we can open up the playing field. And, because how with the inclusion of non-binary characters in the last season as regulars. Now I know we've had non-binary characters before, but these are regulars. They're in the show all the time, and I love it. I don't see why anybody wouldn't like it. Because Star Trek is a celebration of everything and everyone. Exactly. Have them in. Have as much of that as you possibly can. Tell a good story at the same time, though.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, we're approaching an hour. George, do you have a question here? I don't want
to just really quick.
We can go on for hours.
I know we could. Yeah, forget about it. We could. So one thing that made me laugh when I was watching your channel was when you talked about Enterprise, the show Enterprise, when you talked about the theme song, and you said, "I don't give a crap what anybody thinks about it. I like that song," And I went back, and it's funny because I didn't know about that song. Was that it's actually a Rod Stewart song, which I didn't know that he actually recorded that before. But now it's just it's funny because I actually like the song. Now I personally don't think it kind of matches for me to put it on a Star Trek episode.
We can't be friends anymore then, George. That's it.
Goodbye.
No, exactly. But I do like the song. But I like the way you approached it on that episode.
I feel like for so many people to completely write off a show because of its theme music is again flying in the face of IDIC. It's like, well, I mean, season 1 and 2 of Star Trek Enterprise, it got off to a bit of a slow, rocky start, but the show blossomed into something that was great, and the plug was pulled on it too soon. I can understand why people don't like the song, and particularly the use of the song, given the fact that Star Trek has such a long and famous history of using beautifully composed music, and the preceding show was Voyager, which, in my opinion, probably has the greatest theme music. Jerry Goldsmith's beautiful score. It's just in everybody's mind, and it will always be. Enterprise, kind of turn of the millennium. It's very much a kind of product of its time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But when you, I mean, and also, I wasn't, when I first heard it, I wasn't aware that it was a Rod Stewart performed song. I think they used it in Patch Adams as well, and I think people were like, I didn't like that film, and they kind of were already connecting it with something that they didn't like. I think there were also people that don't like Rod Stewart because he's a serial womanizer. I've seen somewhere someone post the song has white supremacist connections, and I'm like, I've never been able to work that out. When you look at the lyrics, the lyrical content, to me, it's very Star Trek. It's very self-improvement. I can reach any star, and it's all very positive and optimistic. And for me, very much in keeping with the central themes of not only Enterprise, but of all Star Trek. And I think it's become initially it was just a joke. It was just kind of
Right.
like, yeah, do you know, I like Faith with Heart. I don't care what you say. I did it with Sub Rosa as well, and people are
Yeah.
like, is this guy real? Is this guy for real? And I think it's just become a thing where I'm just now living my gimmick, and it's just I do love Faith with the Heart, and I think I've tricked my brain at some point into just genuinely like. I love it, and it's a shoot now. It's not kayfabe. I love it. So I don't know.
My wife loved it too, and I always thought it was a little bit too long. It's
Right.
like, I think it's like, what is it, like 20 minutes before the before the like a 20-minute song, and
It is kind of a long thing. Yeah.
I think it was a little bit too long. I thought, but my wife, whenever I wanted to like fast forward, she said, no, I like that song. So she, so I'm like, I got a wife who likes Star Trek, so let me just.
Yeah.
I wind up people even more so when I tell them that I actually prefer the reworking. I prefer the season 3 and 4 version. They're like, you can't like that. It's got the country guitars, and I'm like, I don't know. There's just something about it. There's something about it.
Yeah. It's good. Yeah. I mean, it is. So let's we're gonna let you go, Michael. Thank you so much for being on. I'm gonna ask you one question, and I probably know the answer to this, but if you had one captain that you had to actually be what captain would you be comfortable visiting a planet wearing a red shirt?
Wow.
I think we know the answer, but
well, I've already. I mean, Cisco's my favorite captain. He always has been, probably always will be. But which captain would I feel safe wearing a red shirt? Oh God, I don't know. That's hard. I'm gonna say, based on what we were talking about earlier, and given her connection with her crew, I'm gonna say Burnham, because Burnham genuinely cares. I mean, all captains care, okay? But when you watch Discovery, and they've tried really hard to have this be a thing in Discovery, more so than any other show. I know Janeway had a close connection with her crew, but Burnham and her crew, they are so homogenized. They're so together. They're a central core unit that I feel like Burnham would look after me, even if I was an ensign, on my first away mission. She'd keep me safe, maybe. Please keep me safe, Burnham.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to go down with Kirk. No. Like, go up that hill. It's like Williams, Thomas, go up those hills. You're like, okay.
Yeah, absolutely not. I transfer off. I'd go to the Constitution. Oh no, not that one.
So, Michael, thank you so much. I want to actually let our viewers know that this is your site, right, over here. It's actually underneath our screen, so I don't know why I just did that, but oh yeah, it is. There it goes right there. So this is your site. You can get all your social media and your show, your YouTube show, which is fantastic. We want to thank you for being on. We appreciate you taking the time on a Sunday to do this with us. And this will air, and we will, we're gonna definitely keep following you and keep supporting your channel and all that. And really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you so much for having me, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Thank you.